I've met when I was in New York and in other places. Um, I just want to say how wonderful it feels to be part of this international, really, really, really international community and to spend time with all of you. And I just must share that with you. I, taking a little break like an hour ago, eating something, I went on my Facebook and there was this article telling about how there seems to be a connection of um, the gender of people, of leaders of state, and how well they cope with the corona crisis. Like four of the top countries dealing well with the crisis have female heads of state. And when I shared that with my daughters, one of them goes like, yeah, but maybe it's because the countries are such that they are willing and able to elect a woman to be president, and therefore they also know how to deal with corona. So I think the back and forth between strong women and what we can achieve in society um, goes both ways. And I think the Women's League is one of the, how can I say that, big players, big supporters. Also for our rabbinical seminary here in Germany, where we are training a future generation of Masorti conservative rabbis, not only for Germany, but for all of Europe and even beyond. We have one student from Colombia, from South America, and from all over the place. So we are studying Mishnah. You've been studying many chapters already before. It's chapter 7. And
so people can really learn what Women's League is all about. This is a program usually just for our members. And now that so many of us are stuck in our homes, we want to show the world, not just the women, but everyone, how much Women's League provides for the Jewish community. So take it away. It's all yours.
Thank you. And at the end of our chapter, we'll have a piece which is really, really relevant of how we build community in these times, and how sharing through screens and through just being visible to each other and not being in the same space. So we'll get to that. The overall topic of this chapter really is the zimun, the invitation to recite Birkat Hamazon together, something which we are all familiar with. All of us have been in situations where there was Birkat Hamazon, the grace after meals, and we all know we sing on Chagim, we sing one of the psalms, the Shir HaMalot, and then one person takes the lead and invites the others to share. And the text, as very often in the Mishnah, goes right into the middle and says, 3 people who have eaten together are obligated to lezamen, to convene to say the blessing after a meal together, to invite each other for the blessing after the meal. Even though our Mishnah has 5 individual sections called Mishnayot, there are actually 8 topics. And I would like to give you an overview of where we are going before we go then really word by word or line by line into it. As so often in the Mishnah, the very basic knowledge is just assumed and indeed missing here. The actual text of the Zimun is not really quoted. Later there will be some pieces where we talk about one detail of the text, but the entire text is never quoted, or what it means is also not explained. It's just assumed, people know, and we got right into the text. And then we talk about how many people are needed for the Zimun. On which food are you saying the Zimun, yes or no? Forbidden food, questionable food, etc. Who can be counted into the Zimun, into this invitation, into this group who's getting together, into this, as we might say, community of people who are benching together, saying the Birkat Hamazon. And afterwards, we talk about the amount of food that's needed, like what is really eating and what is not enough eating to say a blessing over it. And then we go into a kind of fantasy between 3 people getting together up until 10,000 people being together. I mean, I would like to see the space where 10,000 people can be together and say Birkat Hamazon. And then at the end, we go into a discussion of what really is a group, what brings people together, and when is it permissible to divide a group or to join 2 different groups together. And there is an afterthought at the end about wine, which we'll also get to at the end. I would like to share some preliminary remarks with you. about studying Mishnah in general and this Mishnah specifically. I really love the gender neutral language which we have on our page. And I'm happy to go along with it. You need to excuse if I slip, because German is nearly as bad as Hebrew in terms of being a gendered language. So sometimes, you know, when I'm translating in my head from the German, I might gender something where I'm not intending to gender. So like talking about God in the neutral is really, really difficult in German. I love Mishnah. I really love Mishnah, and spending these hours today with this Mishnah was just a delight. Usually the Mishnah has a very, very logical structure. It goes A and non-A. If A, then B. If non-A, then B or C, or non-B or non-C. And very dual very often. So it's often one thing and the contrary. But very often the Mishnah talks in shorthand. And therefore it's sometimes really difficult to see the structure, because we need to fill in the gaps. Also regarding the assumptions, where the Mishnah just assumes we know what they're talking about, and then skip several steps, which we have to then fill in to get really this logical structure. And often we also need to fill in the other half of the sentence. The Mishnah might say, if A, then B, and then it might go on, and if none B, then, which means we have to fill in the if none A and none B piece in that. But we'll do that as we go along. The Mishnah, and that's also important, especially if we're talking about a very practical piece, which we feel we are familiar with, is not binding halachically. It's very often there are too many gaps in the text, and there has been centuries of halachic discussion afterwards. I will try to, at certain points, to extrapolate into the halacha lema'aseh, practical halacha for our time and practical halachic considerations for today, but that's really not the main purpose of Mishnah and of studying Mishnah. If we wanted to do that, we need to continue from the Mishnah to the Talmud, to the Poskim, till today, which is way more than we can do. The topic of the Zimun, as I said before, is eating together. What does it really mean to eat together in smaller and larger groups? And some of that, I feel, are really especially relevant today when we are in a time of physical distancing. And obviously, I'm not using the word social distancing, because being here together already shows that being physically distant, we can be together and we can be close to each other. But I think it's especially worthwhile looking at the text. So let's try, before we go really into the Mishnah, Rabbi Allen, if you could share the first page of the document I sent you. Does it work? Let's see. Great. There it is.
You have it, right? Okay.
Yes.
And also, I just want to mention to people that if you're able to find the chat, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat as well. And if Barbara, if you and I will just check the chat as it goes along, if there are any comments. Okay.
So what I put here, what you see on the screen is the Zimun copied from, if we scroll on a little bit, you see even the page number 44. So if we start on page 42, then you know all it's the Bencher B'Kol Echad of our movement. And this is the traditional text as we say today. Rabotai or Chaverai or something else, Nevarech, let us thank God. And then the group answers and the leader repeats, and then the leader continues. This is what we are familiar with, and this is the base of what we are discussing. And as you can see, the beginning of our Mishnah actually is printed on top of the text, when 3 or more have eaten together. And the next piece is also part of what we are going to study in our Mishnah. Words in parentheses, which is actually Eloheinu, are recited only when there's a minion present. You're familiar with that, but I just wanted to put it on the screen so that you can see this is really something very relevant and very practical for today. Now we go back to the text, please.
The text
Great.
is up now? Yes.
Wonderful, yes.
Okay.
So it starts, שלושה שאכלו כאחד. If three people eat together, and it's a very specific, very interesting way of expressing that. שלושה שאכלו כאחד, three who ate as if they were one. כאחד. חייבים לזמן are obligated to do zimun together, to convene, to say the blessing after the meal together. The ke'echad sounds easy to us at the beginning, but we will have a debate of what does this mean exactly in later texts, and I'm just hinting to that. What does it mean to eat ke'echad? And the later discussion goes, does it mean you have to start together? Does it mean you have to finish together? Mean sitting at the same table while you're eating? And they go into really prickly details. So let me add some more questions which we have to ask. What does it mean to eat ke'echad? What if one is reading the newspaper at the breakfast table? What if, God forbid, the other one is browsing through Facebook while eating? What if they're not looking at each other, but sitting in front of a screen and just looking at the screen? Is this still ke'echad, looking together? Should we think, okay, if they're watching television and seeing ke'echad the same thing, then it's together. But if everybody is looking at their own screen and doing different things, then it's not together. These are all open questions. And it leads us deep into how do we eat, how do we socialize, how do we share around the table. And then the chayavin lizamen, it is their duty, they are obligated to say it. This is really interesting because it puts it in a clearly halachic framework. The zimun is not just a nice addition. Everybody is obligated to say Birkat Hamazon, right? And we had in the chapter before this chapter, you might remember, it was all about on which food do you say which blessing of before and after, etc. So this is clear. But the zimun, sitting together and doing it together, also is an halachic obligation. And the question about the fluidity of the group, who is in and who is out, is an important question there. Now the Mishnah continues. If they ate food which might not be or not have been, and then there come several descriptions which are a little bit complicated. Let's read the English first, which may not have been tithed, or the first tithe from which Truma had been removed, or the second tithe of Hekdesh that had been redeemed, or a servant that had eaten an olive's volume, or a kuti, they must convene with them. So we have 4 kinds of questionable food and 2 kinds of questionable people, where our Mishnah says at the beginning, if these are the conditions, these people are in. And then, as the Mishnah very often does, it continues, but if they are out. They cannot convene with them, as it's the last sentence. Before we look at the details of our Mishnah, and I hope it shows up on the screen nicely, I made a chart about these different terminologies. So, Rabbi Ellen, if you can go back to the other. No, that's the next page, please. Exactly. Great. Can you make it a little smaller so that we can see the entire? Yep. And maybe pull it a little further up. Great. A little more. Wonderful. Leave it like this. And there's one more yellow, green, the crop on the bottom, but I hope you can read what's written there, more or less. Great. So we are talking about taxation of agricultural products in temple times as a way to qualify food, which is permitted, which is doubtful, and which is clearly forbidden food. And the series which we have in our text, and we'll get to back to that later, appears in several other pieces exactly in the same order. So this seems to be kind of a test case for defining which food is forbidden, allowed, doubtful. Like probably today we would say something like, well, if I buy Chinese food from a vegetarian Chinese store, can I have that on my kosher dishes? What if it's only a salad? So we have some examples, and with these examples, we're talking about the general background and the rule. So let's assume there is agricultural product, the crop. The first step one has to take is to give truma, which you can see on the on top in the yellow, a donation to the priest. And this donation, or there's a slash missing, can be 1/40th to 1/60th of the crop. So it's really a very symbolic amount of food that you give to the priest. And if you do not trust that truma has been given, that's now the violet background, this food is called demai, suspicious, when you do not know if the truma has been taken away or not. Like, are these products, have they been taxed, or are they kind of illegal imports, so to speak? And if you can be sure that the truma has not been taken or given, then it's tevel, which is really forbidden. And we get back to these two expressions again, damai and tevel. Now, after giving truma, you have to do another step. You have to give maaser rishon, the first tithe, the first tenth, which really is supposed to be 10%, and you give that to a Levite, not to a Kohen, but to a Levite. And you can choose your favorite Levite from your village, your neighbor, the next town, whatever. You decide to which Levite this 10% go. And that means you stay with 90% of the crop, as you can see in the green downstairs. Now, there are more steps to take. It's up on the Levite now. The Levite has to give again a truma, like the one before, a small donation to the priest. And if he has done that, the food he's given, the 10% of my produce, belongs to him or her, and they can even share it with their neighbors again. So just imagine I bring my food to the Levite, he takes a little bit of it away, puts it aside for the Kohen, and then we can even sit down and share the same food. If he doesn't do that, then the food is again called tevel, and it's forbidden. Okay, after I have given first to the Kohen, and then I've given to the Levite, the maaser rishon, I'm still with 90% of my food, and now I have to do the maaser sheni, the second tithe, which is supposed to go to Jerusalem. And I can eat it while in Jerusalem. But as we know, going to Jerusalem, not only in lockdown times, might be complicated and not possible. And therefore I can, that's the expression they use, I can redeem it. I can assign a realistic financial value to that food and send the money to Jerusalem. And after that, I can eat the food. That's the redeemed second tithe. So the food stays with me. I, if you may say so, sell it, I buy it back from the Kohanim, and then I can eat it, right? This is the overall structure. Now we go, let's see. Yeah, let's go back to the Mishnah first and look at the text a little bit more closely.
There it is. You have it right? Okay.
There it is, perfect. So, as I said before, we have 4 types of food which are questionable but are counted in. If they ate food which might not have been tithed, that's the demai. I'm not sure if the tithe has been given or not. Or the first tithe from which truma has been removed. Or the second tithe, the maaser sheni, which I have redeemed sold back from the Kohanim, or hekdesh. That's another concept that you see the shoresh, the root of kadosh in there, right? It has been sanctified. It has been set aside. I have made a promise to dedicate this. It has been dedicated to for sacred use. But then it says pledged, but then I can still buy it back, which means the redeemed. These 4 kinds of food, if somebody has eaten them, they are part of the zimun. Now we move from the food to people. The first person is, imagine 2 people sitting at the table, and there is a servant, a shamash. We were fine. Rabbi Ellen, we're still in the first Mishnah. Yes, thanks. The servant needs to have eaten kazait, the amount of an olive, and we'll get back to the olive in a second. Then we can count him in. Now, think back about my first question. The servant might not have been sitting at the table. He might have been walking in, he or she might have been walking in and out, putting food on the table. If somehow he has eaten a little bit, and we'll get back to that, the kazait, the amount of an olive, then we can count him or her in. The other person, and that's a question which we'll have in the next session also, if it's a kuti, the general interpretation is that the Samaritan, right, or Samarian, somebody who is close enough to Judaism, but maybe not a real Jew. You know, maybe he or she is chas v'chalila, Reform or ultra-Orthodox or going to Chabad or whatever. But it's kind of an okay Jew, so we can still count them in, right? Now, as I said before, the Mishnah turns around. It has said, if A, then B. And now we get the if none A, then not B section. And it goes back to the same things. If it is tevel, truma was not given, or the first ma'aser rishon was not given, or the ma'aser sheni, the second tithe, was not given, or, now I'm missing something, but it's again 4 points, then this person cannot be included in the Birkat Hamazon. Or a servant, a shamash, who ate less than an olive. I mean, just nipping from the food is not enough. We'll talk about the olive in a second. Or a non-Jew, we cannot count them in. So we have this category, we have this categorization. Rabbi Ellen, if we can go back, because I made a nice table of to summarize that again. Just scrolling down on the page. Perfect. Thank you. So again, 4 kinds of questionable food, 2 kinds of questionable people, but okay, we can include them. 4 kinds of forbidden food and 2 kinds of excluded people. We are not counting them in, and therefore we are not counting them in the 3 which we need for Birkat Hamazon.
Is it interesting that they use the word shamash for servant and not like eved or shivcha or?
Yes, that's really important because we are getting to the eved, to the real servant. So the shamash is somebody who is serving, like it's more the profession, right? Could be like a waiter. Maybe that would be the nicer translation in that point. He is waiting the table. Whereas the eved, which is a specific social status, we'll get to that in a minute, right? In the next Mishnah. Now, what I want to point out here, what's really important, these issues of which food is okay and is not okay, all relate to the temple. Now, we need to keep in mind that the Mishnah was put down after the temple, which means this discussion is similarly irrelevant to the rabbis who are doing it as it is to us, right? So they're discussing who is in and who is out and which food is okay and which is not okay in a very theoretical framework. But obviously, we can do hashlachot. We can draw conclusions from that, understanding that if somebody eats really tray food, they're not obligated to say Birkat Hamazon, and we cannot include them in the zimun. And the other question is, and I use that term on purpose, questionable people, what it leaves us with is, with an open question, how much do we need to check with what a person has eaten and how Jewish they are? Because obviously the first option leaves questionable things in there, which I would interpret as, we do not need to check anybody's tzitzis and see, have they really eaten bread? We can just assume that they are in, so let's count them in and go with that. Later halacha goes into details. What does it mean if somebody has not eaten bread but is still at the table? What if somebody has already said Birkat Hamazon silently? Can we count them in, and so on? But that's another topic for further discussion. Now let's move to the second Mishnah, back to the source sheet.
As we transition to that, there were two questions. I think you may have referred to it already, but do we assume that the food has been tithed? Was one question. And same person asked, how about a convert? And I would think the convert, once they convert, we consider them as Jewish. Yeah?
Totally. I would, okay. Yes. And
then,
we assume that's exactly the point with the mai. The food may not have been tithed. You might not be sure. You might be doubtful if this person keeps kosher, yes or no. But you can assume, yes, it's okay. You do not need to prove that it's okay. You can just assume it's okay. And I think that's an important lesson to take from here. Now, next one. Nashim va'avadim uktanim. Women, slaves, and children. Our, how can I say that, Rabbi Ellen?
The trio that often go together.
Yes, a trio that often goes together. Ein mezamnim alehem, are not counted into the three people you need to say the zimun. Till here, then, because the next sentence is already a next topic. Now, I want to keep that very short because I also don't know how much you might have discussed this piece already. So please feel free, if you want to go deeper in that, write in the chat so we can continue with that. I'll make this very short. Three categories of persons. This is not biology. This is social status. Usually we describe it as these are three groups of people who have been traditionally exempt from time-bound mitzvot. And therefore they cannot be counted. But what I want to say, these categories are just not relevant for us today anymore. They do not exist. The ktanim, the children, they are still there. They grow up. So obviously it's not an essential identity issue here. And there's a discussion later how old the kid needs to be counted. And the Sephardim, for example, start counting kids for Zimun at age 6 already, which I found really fascinating. Some others say at age 9, and obviously others go with 12 or 13. Avadim, the slaves, are a halachic category which does not exist anymore. And we heard just a little bit before, the shamash, the servant, the waiter, might have been an eved, but it goes by what people do, and it's also not an essential, it's a social status, it's not biology, and it's not a question about identity, so to speak. And I'm putting that very clearly. Nashim, women, in the halachic sense as it's used here, do not exist in our world anymore. Because here, women are dependent on their men, not independent persons, and so on. And I'm not going into that maybe in the ultra-Orthodox and Orthodox world, this kind of definition of women does still exist, but I really hold as, like we don't have avadim, like we don't have slaves in our society, talking halachically, right? Not getting into human trafficking and all the other issues. but we hold there are no slaves. There should not be any slaves. In the same category, women do not. Halachic women in these texts are not relevant for us anymore. But here, there is a point that goes even deeper, because usually we say the halachic texts talk about women as not being obligated. Women are obligated to say Birkat Hamazon. And 3 women who ate together are even obligated to do zimun by themselves. And women who sit at the table with the men are also obligated to stay around and listen to their zimun in the traditional interpretation, which makes it very, very clear that excluding women here is about who is in and who is out, who counts, who is the core community. And I just want to quote one thing which I came across while working on that on an Orthodox side. It says, well, actually, it's polite to ask when there is this section when you say Bireshut, with the permission of somebody, let's bless, right? You might remember that one. It's polite to also ask the host's wife. Now listen to that. It means the man, the male person is the host, and the wife is only an addition to the male person, right? Which shows you clearly who defines community in and out. Okay, so far for that. Next point. How much is needed to be eaten in order to convene? And there are 2 opinions. One is the general Mishnaic opinion, at least kazait, like an olive. And Rabbi Yehuda says at least kabetza, like the amount of an egg. That sounds pretty easy. But if you check the sources, then we have a huge discussion. What is a betza and what is a zayit? What is an olive? An olive seems to be somewhere in between 15 and 55 cubic centimeters, which is 1 to 3 cubic inches. Just imagine an olive having the size of 3 cubic inches, right? That's pretty big. And the betza is between 55 and 143 cubic centimeters, or 2 to 5 fluid ounces. That leaves pretty much, wiggling room to see what it means and what really is the amount. The question which is in the background, obviously, is what does it mean really to eat? What is real food and what is just nibbling along? And we have this passage, this question between kazait and kabetza all the time. Like just on Pesach, we had to eat a betza of matzah, which is quite a lot if you take it literally, right? You really have to stuff a lot of matzah into your mouth, which is fine for the first matzah in the year, but later on the second Seder, it might already be a little bit more difficult. Okay, if there are any questions. Nothing at the moment?
No, there were a few questions.
Okay, please.
And I think you may have answered it, but why only the serving kazayit? What about everyone's kazayit? So that was.
Yes, that's answered, yeah.
And what if the servant is a woman, or were they all basically male servants?
I don't know that piece. I think since they are talking in a male context, they probably would not even consider a female servant counting her in. But that's women being written in and out of history as it happens all the time.
Right. And just so everyone knows, and if you're okay with this too, when
Sure.
this is over, within a few days, we're going to edit the video and also put with the video, it's also going to have your sheets that you had. So that's good,
Great.
right? Okay. Okay.
Great. Wonderful.
Do you want me to put the Mishnah back up?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Now we are.
There we go.
So the Mishnah 3 is a little bit, it's kind of complicated and we need to figure it out, but I made a chart also so we can look at the chart in a moment. There are 2 questions going into each other. It says, Ketzat mezamnin, how do you do the zimun? And then there are two options. First, Bishlosha Omer Nevarech, if there are three people together and say Nevarech, as we usually do. And if it's Bishlosha Vehu, so it's three plus the one who is doing the Zimun, then say, instead of Nevarech, Baruchu. Let us bless, like the let us bless with the Torah reading. And this change goes through the entire text. Always there is a fixed number, and if it's one person more, then the person doing the Zimun is not included, but says Baruchu. This is not what we do, and it has been abandoned pretty early, so we do always say Nevarech. And one of the commentators says, and I like that very much, also because it relates us back to Pesach. This is from the commentary Melechet Shlomo, which is a Yemenite scholar from the 16th century, Shlomo Adeni. He says, Av hu eino motzi et atzmo min haklal, which might sound familiar to some of you. This is about the Rasha, the evil child in the Haggadah, who takes himself or herself out of the community. So if I stand there and say, Baruch, you should bless, I am taking myself out. And therefore saying, Nevarech, let us bless together, is the more inclusive form. Now this goes through the entire text. All this back and forth between Nevarech and Baruch, and kind of overlaps with the numbers. And I have, Rabbi Allen, if you can go back to the chart for last time, because I think that's the easiest, not following the text and figuring it out together, but really just looking at the.
And can you also, someone asked about how we've changed Nevarech, Rabotai Nevarech to Chaverai Nevarech, also being more inclusive. Okay.
So I think that's a very good question. And
you have the elaborations on the Zimun on the right. Okay, good.
Yes, we see that here. So I think the Rabotai, it was always flexible. Rabotai means gentlemen, right? And we moved to Chaverai, friends, and some people go for Chaverai and Chaverotai, or depending on whoever is there. Or, I mean, I personally love doing the Yiddish instead. Wir wollen benchen. Also because it's nice and close to German, and using the word benchen is also something I like very much. But that's it. So the Chaverai is really flexible, as is what comes afterwards. Now, what the text does, it goes in steps: 3, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000. And as Joshua Kalb, one of the teachers at the conservative yeshiva, says, the more elaborate the community is, the more elaborate becomes the Zimun, right? And some of you might be familiar with the Zimun we do when there's a Brit Milah or a Chuppah. Then it becomes even more elaborate, and it takes rounds and rounds and rounds of making it even more beautiful. So it starts with the Nevarech for 3, and then it adds, we do Eloheinu. The Mishnah still says Le Eloheinu, and there's a little debate later if it should be Leloheinu or Eloheinu. We're not going there at the moment. If we have 100, we add God's name, Adonai. If we have 1,000, we add Elohei Yisrael. So we say God, the eternal, our God, and the God of all of Israel. And 10,000, which, as I said, I don't know where we'll get 10,000 people benching together. Then it really becomes elaborate and goes Elohei Yisrael, Elohei HaTzvaot, God of the legions, Yoshev HaKruvim, who dwells above the Kruvim, above the angels, Al Hamazon She'achalnu, for the food that we have eaten. Great. Any questions for that part?
People can either raise their hands or write in the chat, or I think you can even unmute yourself. And Barbara and I will peruse to see. I don't see any hands up yet. Okay.
Okay, fine. So we'll, happy to answer any questions also a little later. Now, just continuing with the Mishnah, Mishnah 4, if we can see the text, that would be great. Wonderful.
It's up there, right?
Yes, it's out there.
Okay, great. Okay.
Shlosha she'achlu ke'echad, that goes back like word for word to the beginning of the Mishnah. And this is one of the pieces that I love so much about the Mishnah, how they really use the same words, half sentences, and build the structure so that you can really follow along. Einan resha'in lechalek. Now that's a completely new topic. If you're sitting together, 3 of you, you are not allowed to just leave and lechalek, to spread out, to become chalakim, to become parts, right? V'chen arba'a, v'chen chamisha, and the same is true for 4 or 5. Because if they part, then you don't have an opportunity to say zimun, right? I mean, of the 4, obviously 1 can leave, but the 4 cannot split into 2 and 2. And the 5 cannot, well, it's shorthand, I would say. Shisha nechalkin. As soon as there are 6, you can split, because then you have 2 groups of 3 who can do the zimun still. Till 10. So you can always split into 2 groups. Asara eina nechalkin. 10 do not split again. Achiyu esrim. Till they are going to be 20, and then they can split again. So this is pretty straightforward, but I think it's worthwhile looking at the what does it mean, like the deeper meaning in that text of, if we have built a community, if we're sitting together, we start having obligations towards one another, right? We can decide if we come together for a meal, but as soon as we're sitting at the table, then we are bound to each other. Then we have started a community, and then we need to do what the community is supposed to do. Yeah, I think it's beautiful, actually. It's really, really beautiful. And then we're already getting to the 5th Mishnah, and then Rabbi Ellen, I think we have just to discuss a little bit longer. We're quicker than what I thought, but that's fine. 2 groups who have eaten in one house, chavura is the word, when they come together, and the question is, do they bench or do they bench? But man shemiktatan ro'in elu et elu, when some of one group see some of the other group, then they may join mitzarfim lezimun. They may do a zimun together. So we are obviously, if we're talking about some of them, then I think it's clear that we're not talking about 3 here, 2 here, and 1 there. We're talking about a bigger group, and the question is, are we getting a minyan in that way, right? Now, imagine the situation. We might have, we might be at the kosher restaurant, right? And there might be like booths, and groups are sitting in booths, and you can still join. You don't have to, but you can join if a part of the group sees the other part of the group. And this Mishnah has been used by the Committee on Jewish Law and Standards when they were thinking in that situation now about what to do about minyan on Zoom. Can we, if we are not physically together, but just see each other, can we then say, okay, we still are a community, we still are a minyan? And this is, I mean, there are some other texts which are similar to that, which I didn't bring right now. But the situation, you can really imagine that situation. Like now, we are in this meeting, we are over 50 people, and we don't see each other, all of us, but some of us see some of the others, right? And that's the connection which makes all of us together joins us all together as a community. Obviously, the Mishnah and the rabbis are not thinking about doing that via computer. The situation in the Mishnah really probably is we are sitting in two adjacent rooms, and the tables are so set that you can see each other really physically. But there is another piece of the Mishnah where even if somebody is in an adjacent building and looks down even 2 or 3 floors down, they can be counted into the minyan. And that's one of the reasons why we can say maybe if we have, now that's the question which is then still open. If we have a group in one place and then we add individuals to make the minyan, or if we have a different situation, a minyan in one place, and then we add more people who can join and maybe say Kaddish also on their screen, or answer Amen and to be Yotze to fulfill their obligation to say Kaddish from afar. I think it's a really, really deep question. And if we had studied this Mishnah 6 weeks ago, I would have been, we wouldn't have thought about construing a minyan over the internet. And now we have had all these experiences of how to do a Seder while our family is somewhere else. Can we do a Zimun? Are we really together? Are we around one table if the others are just on the screen sitting on our table, right? So it seems to be clear from the Mishnah that for the Birkat Hamazon, that's fine. I think still it's a little, you need some more points and some more arguments to go from Birkat Hamazon and even adding Eloheinu, which is the sign of having 10 people saying Birkat Hamazon together, to say, okay, that's also a basis, enough of a basis to say Kaddish, or to even do Kedusha or Torah reading when we don't have a physical minyan in one place. But this is an opening in that direction. Questions?
There were some.
There was one. I've got one.
Okay, Barbara.
It was Shula referring to the minyan. Is it because we prefer a minyan?
I think, it's a very deep moment to think about our attitude as Jewish community towards being individuals and being a community. We say, for example, we say tefillah betzibur, tefillah in a community, tefillah with a minyan, is something really important. But on the other hand, praying by yourself, each of us is empowered to pray by herself or by themselves, right? Which is a very different attitude from some of the Christian churches where you really need somebody else doing the prayer or doing the important pieces of the prayer for you. So the balance between us being autonomous and having the power of talking directly to God, if you want to say so, on the one hand, and the power that a community builds by having a minyan, and only when you have a minyan, if we go back to our Zimun, we are able to really say Eloheinu, our God, right? That's the tension which we are in and which we are struggling right now, because we're building community in very new ways. We realize that it really builds community. We feel together, those on the screen right now, but we're missing something. And I also personally, I also feel it's important that we give space to and mourn for that what's missing, right? And not just say, why don't we just live by Zoom? That's okay.
And Barbara, we have one question on this chat, and then Rita and Mimi also have their hands up.
Okay. The question on the chat says, Mishnah 4 says that 3 of us are not allowed to separate to bench. Is that the reason that you're supposed to bench in the same place with the same place that you ate the meal, in the same place as you ate the meal?
Right. Yes, I think that's one of the consequences that the later discussion is taking. of saying, what does it mean, achlu ke'echad, eating together and eating in one space. So it's really, there's another discussion which talks about you have to really sit down to eat. And if you are just eating while standing, you can even eat as much as you want. You don't have to say Birkat Hamazon afterwards, because eating while standing or walking around is not really eating. And I think that's something we can all take, take out food and just fast food on the street and on the subway is, I mean, obviously it's eating in as far as it, the calories get stuck in your body, but in terms of eating and the wellness of eating is really not answered in that way. So the sitting down and being together is an important piece. And I think the same place really grounds you while you're eating and while you build community.
Mimi Pollock had a question.
And you should be able to unmute yourself. I'm not sure where you are on the screen.
Here I am. Sorry.
Okay, great.
I said it's so funny that we are having this discussion now instead of 2 weeks ago, when it would have really been something that we should have been talking about and thinking about before we had our Sederim. So it's very funny, I think, just because of the fact that we are usually together and we had family on this screen and this part of the family, that together and everything. We all did Birkat Hamazon together as if we were all sitting at the same table. And if you talk about at the same table and on the same table, who knows if that's even kosher. But this is what we did because this is what our custom has been. So it's strange that it's coming up now a week and a half too late.
But it's perfect, Mimi, because it's exactly what you did. So you really got the spirit of the Mishnah and the spirit of what does it mean to be together and eat together, right? So I think it's beautiful, actually.
Again, it's because of past custom. So you really didn't even think about halacha, and you just went on with what you were used to doing.
Yeah.
And Rita had a question.
Well, it was almost like Mimi's. My question was, I know that there are a lot of people who are alone in their homes right now, who are celebrating Shabbat alone, unless they can Zoom or with other family members. A lot of people where there's just two of us, by ourselves. So if there's only two of you, do you say Birkat Hamazon? Or if you are alone in your house, celebrating whether it's Shabbat or whether it's Yom Tov, what is the rule about that?
So Rita, thank you so much, because that gives me the opportunity to clarify something. The obligation to say Birkat Hamazon is on each individual. Right. The only question which this Mishnah deals with is, do you do this invite each other to do it at the beginning, right? And if you think about it again, you need three people, because if I say, let Chaverai, my friends, plural, let us say Birkat Hamazon together, I need to have at least two people answering me, right? And there are some pieces in the liturgy where this is also true, where you do, like in the Hallel, there is a piece which you do responsively, and you only do it responsively if you are at least three people. So one is saying and two are answering. But it doesn't mean like not doing Birkat Hamazon by yourself, singing out loud and as atonal or tonal or beautiful as you want. I mean, it's a great opportunity also, right? Or just the two, being two together. I mean, I love at the moment, we do a lot of davening, just me, myself, my husband, and our grown-up daughter. We are lucky to be four of us together with our little daughter also, our son being in Israel at the moment. But I just read actually the other day, somebody said, sing out loud, it's good for your health. So singing out loud Birkat Hamazon or any piece of the tefillah, go for it.
But just to clarify, if you're one person or two people, you don't say the Eloheinu.
Right. The Eloheinu you only say with 10, and you also do not say the Chaverai Nevarech at the beginning. You just do Shir Hamalot, and then you go right into Baruch Atah Adonai Elohim, and so on.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I lost the chat.
I'm sharing the screen to show this part is the part that you would say if you have 3 or more. If 1 or 2 people are at home, you don't say this part, but you say the rest of it.
Right.
This part is what we're referring to if you need to have 3 or 10. Sorry. I'm back with you, Barbara.
Maybe, Barbara, before we add more questions, just in order to because we have one sentence left at the Mishnah, and for those who have read that sentence, I don't want to leave without saying something about that, because it's a little bit confusing, if you want to say so. It says you can say the blessing of the wine can only be said if you add water to your wine. This is not what we do today, right? Even that's Rabbi Eliezer who says that. And the explanation is the wine back then, first of all, the people didn't drink Coca-Cola, they didn't drink juices, and they didn't drink plain water. They always had wine and added the water into it. And Rabbi Eliezer was just afraid that people might be too drunk to say Birkat Hamazon in a dignified way. So we are fine not pouring water into our wine.
Okay, so
There was just one more question, and I really like this question. It is, oh, I lost it again. It keeps moving, sorry. So we're supposed to wait until after Birkat Hamazon to clean up?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. We are supposed to enjoy. Some people, what it says, I mean, it says definitely you should have still some bread on the table. And you should not remove the mapa, the cloth. You should, some people do remove knives from the table, which I think is a beautiful symbol of this is something about shalom and being together and being well together and moving away aggressiveness. And obviously, I mean, you can clear the table and just have dessert and coffee on the table, obviously. So it shouldn't be a total mess, but it should still feel like part of the meal.
And there were 2 more questions. One, you're teaching, so I'm not going to answer it. If alone, one could always say Birkat Achrona, that's for something. You can refer to that. So you want to respond to that?
Again, if you're alone, you can, well, Bracha Achrona, actually, that's not something to do about how can I say that, about how many people are around that, but about which food you have eaten. So Bracha Achrona goes for cake and wine and fruit, especially fruit of the land of Israel. As soon as you have bread, then you go for Birkat Hamazon.
So you only say Birkat Hamazon if you're having bread.
Right.
So,
well, some people actually argue that if it's a full lechem in Hebrew, does not only refer to bread, but also if it's really a full meal. Some people argue you could say Birkat Hamazon even if you have just lots of spaghetti, right? If it's a real meal. But usually the interpretation is, yeah, you need bread on the table to say Birkat Hamazon.
And Elisa Abrams had a question. I unmuted you.
Hi. I'm wondering whether the reference to wine is connected in any way to the custom of actually drinking wine at the end of Birkat Hamazon.
So this is it comes in some other sections also, and in a further discussion, there is a tradition of saying Birkat Hamazon al hakos, holding a cup of wine, mevarchim al hakos, as something which is especially laudable. We do that all for Pesach, actually, right? We fill the kos, and I'm always losing a count at that point. I think it's the 3rd one, or is it right? It's the 3rd one.
It's the 3rd one.
For Birkat Hamazon. And it's a German Yeke tradition to do any Birkat Hamazon with the cup in the hand. So we have in our bencher, we have printed at the end of Birkat Hamazon, we have printed another Borei Pri Hagafen. And whenever we have American friends or guests, and I'm, handing out the kavod, the honor of saying Birkat Hamazon, which is something you are supposed to do. You are supposed to give that to guests. Then I'm always telling the American guests, but you know what? We do it al hakos, and at the end, please say Borei Pri Hagafen again. And what's really nice, if you do that at Kiddush on Shabbat afternoon, then there's a Yiddish rhyme that goes with it, which goes Borei Pri Hagafen und jetzt gehen wir schlafen. Now we're going to have our Schluf, right? Let's go and sleep. And if you go for Yiddish, then it goes Borei Pri Hagafen and jetzt gehen wir schlafen. So that works pretty well.
I think I might have to incorporate that in my home.
Yeah.
This was wonderful. We actually try to keep to an hour each session, and sessions 1 through 6 can be found recorded on Women's League's website, WLCJ.org. Each of the chapters we have studied, and this is a great benefit of our membership. And while we're all in quarantine right now, in isolation, whatever you want to call it, but not being able to see each other, we've always been Zooming, but now we're letting other people know about how much Zooming that we do, that you could join us. And once this is over, I hope that if you haven't been a Women's League member, you can become a Women's League member. If you're not able to be a Women's League member, because you do have to identify as a woman, that you can still financially support us and find some women in your life who might want to be Women's League members as well. Our next session of specifically Mishnah Berakhot, the next chapter will be taught on Sunday, May 3rd at 1 p.m., chapter 8 with Rabbi Amy Levin from Israel. And also, if you want to learn more about Birkat Hamazon in general, we're having 2 other sessions about literally Birkat Hamazon. One will be on May 7th from 8 to 9, the who, what, where, when, and why of Birkat Hamazon. Different than this. This is a technical how it came from the Mishnah. The one we will be studying is how it became what it is today, why we have what it is today on Thursday, May 7th with Rabbi Helene Kornsgold. And then it can be a tongue twister if you've never learned how to sing the Birkat Hamazon. And we're going to learn how to lead Birkat Hamazon on Thursday, May 14th, 8 to 9 with Erica Velasquez, who is an Arab Chazan. So she's studying to be a Chazan. So I hope you'll join us. And if you didn't get all of that, you should become part of our Women's League web email group and learn all about it as well. And I hope, Rabbi Gesa, that you will be able to see some of the comments that we've had online here, because people, as I am also, love studying with you. Thank you. This was wonderful. You're an extraordinary teacher and have a wonderful ability to make everything, whoops, it moved, as Barbara keeps telling me, everything so clear. Thank you. From Ellen Bresnick. So we thank all of you for your comments. Kol hakavod, yasher koach to you. Thank you so much. I wish good health for everyone in your community and your family. And thank you for all that you do at the Frankel Institute, one of our 5 seminaries that Torah Fund supports. So thank you. Barbara, last words.
Thank you very much, everybody. I look forward to seeing you when we learn about Birkat Hamazon and when we study chapter 8 of Mishnah Berakhot. And then again, I think at 2:30 for our study of Psalms.
Yes.
Thanks everybody for joining us.
Yasher koach. That was wonderful.
Yes, Yasher koach. Thank you, Rabbi Gesa.
Thank you very much.
A pleasure being with you. Lovely
See you later.
spending time with you.
Thank you so much.